Today, our class is going to be upgrading from mechanical to electrified hardware. I'm going to put you to work right away. I'm going to kind of pick your brains and kind of see what do you think we should do, and put your information in the chat, if you will. So if you got your chat up and running, please go ahead and put it to everyone so we can all see. We want to see what your thoughts are too, because everyone's got different thoughts and different ideas, things that we look at. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start you out with a picture here. If I can get my thing to work here. There we go. Sorry about that. So we're going to look at my opening here. So I have an opening here, and I want to look at access controlling this. The customer has asked me to come out and take a look at their opening. They want to create an access control, and it's more for before business hours, because once business hours come around, then we need to understand how it's going to work and how it's going to function. Well, we're doing a site survey. It's about gathering information, and a lot of this comes from our own experiences of looking at different buildings, looking at different construction methods, understanding what we're looking at, types of doors, single doors, double doors, wood, metal, aluminum, what is around that opening. Probably one of the most important things is, do we have a healthy opening? The first part for me is, as I'm walking towards this door, I know the customer wants to access control this door. I'm looking at the overall health of the opening, and I can see that by when I'm looking at the hinge sides of the door. I'm looking at a gap all the way around it. I want to kind of look and see if there's any kind of rubbing or itching, contact where I'm going to have a contact point where I'm going to have issues with the door going to open and function, because those are things I need to take in mind when I'm going to be doing the actual installation of electronic hardware. What are the surroundings? Sometimes we have different types of materials. I have wood material, wood construction. I may have brick, cinder blocks, cement, tilt-up buildings. They come in all different shapes and sizes. In this situation here, I want to understand the hardware as well. And our primary focus today is going to be on the different types of hardware. The site survey is about understanding the opening as a whole. And we have other classes that really get into that site survey side of it. But I'm more going to focus on the hardware side today. So understanding the hardware is important. But here's my question for you. What is one very important question I need to know about not only the opening, but the facility as a whole? What else I need to know and understand about the facility as a whole when I'm going to look at access controlling this? So I've got that little question sitting up there for you in chat. When I think about this opening, what else do I need to know when I'm thinking about the facility as a whole? And this goes back to codes and understanding codes, because this is going to kind of give me my different thoughts on what I might look at and consider for access controlling this opening. Anybody have any thoughts on what is my other big question I need to ask? And actually, it's a two-parter. It's kind of a two-part response to this. Anybody have any thoughts on what other whole question do I need to ask? Quiet group out there? Well, need to understand the occupancy. What is the occupancy going to be? And the other part of occupancy is going to be what is the load accepted in this, because those are key things when we start looking at access controlling something. So the site survey is important. We're looking at all kinds of things, the hardware, interior, exterior, but also remember, it's always about understanding the occupancy and the load. Here I have another one, so I'm going to put you to work again. What are my different options to access control this opening? And as we start looking at this, obviously there are many things that we consider, the door, the construction around it, door gaps, is it a healthy opening? What type of door this is, a path of egress door, because I've got an exit sign up above it. What is my existing hardware types that comes with it? What are my different considerations I need to consider? Does everything work? Is everything functioning correctly? What are my options? So in my, what I want you to do in chat is, I really have two different ways to access control this opening that really makes sense. Any thoughts? So what are your thoughts on this? I need to consider, it looks like I have drywall up around the top up here. So if I've got some drywall sitting up here, that makes it, my path of getting wired down into my opening. I do have a brick wall sitting over here that's exposed. I'm going to have to consider that when it comes to getting wire around it. But I have two primary ways to access control this opening. Who can kind of give me any kind of suggestions on what you think would be my best options? And options we're always going to consider are really going to be a component of cost. How frugal can our customer be? Understanding existing hardware that's on the opening already, understanding codes, understanding the skill set of my technicians. What are my technicians comfortable with? And I was kind of surprised. I did this presentation a few weeks back, and I had basically a group of people that said, we're going to put a mag lock on top of that door. And I kind of had to understand is, why are you going to put a mag lock on the door? And it basically came down to that's what they knew how to do. So what is the skill set of the technicians we're working with? Anybody have any thoughts on here with customer add a center mullion? A center mullion would be possible, but I still have the vertical rods I want to consider depending on what the customer is interested in doing. Right now, a center mullion would not do me too much good because I do not have any center latching. All my latching is up at the top on a vertical rod. But here, probably my two considerations to access control is opening. One, I can electrify the bar. I can go to the owner or I can go to the manufacturer of that bar and say, hey, do you have an electrification kit I can add to this opening? Okay, so there's one option there. The second option I can consider is, do I potentially look at putting an electric strike up on the top, working with the existing vertical rods? There are obviously other considerations that we always need to keep in mind. One is a part of a fire rated assembly. In this, it's very likely I have a fire rated assembly. So I always need to keep that in mind. What are my options based on a fire rated assembly, electrified lock or a lever or electrifying the panic rated bar or electric strike up at the top of the frame. Many different considerations, but the hardware there plays a big part in it. And we always have to keep in mind there's always options for potential for going to something that might end up being wireless. I cannot get wire to an opening. I cannot get wire to a hinge. I cannot get wire to the lock side of the opening. What are the wireless options? And with Aperio, we have a lot of solutions and opportunities there. I do have a separate class just for the Aperio brand. And just quickly, you can see here are just some of the brands that are part of ASSA ABLOY. Within the ASSA ABLOY family, there's about 350 brands worldwide. We can see the groups which are in the group called the Americas, North and South America, some of the primary brands which are here. Obviously, Katie, Albert and I all work for HES, Securitron, Alarm Controls, Life Safety, and Adams, right? We're all based out of Phoenix, Arizona. Albert's actually remote now out in Texas, so it's getting pretty, the weather's getting a little bit nicer in Texas, but they've been chilly a lot lately. We're going to sit in the mid 70s here to mid 80s later this week. So, but ASSA ABLOY as a whole, we can pretty much do anything you want to do on an opening. Doors, hardware, frames, perimeter, fences, we do it all. But safety to me is something I grew up teaching as well. I started at the bottom and worked my way up. I've been a training manager for many years. I was a training manager in the military as NCOIC of training, but safety was critical. In our world of access control, fire and security, whatever we do, safety is always critical. Everyone goes home safe at the end of the day. As I briefly mentioned earlier today, we are not going to get into storefront aluminum. Storefront aluminum has, we have a 2-hour class, we have a 1-hour class, and then we have a scenarios class. So we right now have something where we're working on something new for storefront aluminum, but right now we do have at least 4 hours of storefront aluminum you can watch virtually, and they do come around in our rotation every couple of months as well. So today, I'm not going to hit on that too much because it's such a big topic, and it's 50% of everything we do for access control today, pretty much. So let's get into what we're going to talk about. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. We're going to talk about hardware and recognition of hardware and what are kind of locks and latches we're going to primarily run into and what are some of the different options. And I always tell everybody, if you need help, let us help you out. Our app up here, ASSA ABLOY customer support app up here, that app, if you go into it and you go into HES, Securitron, Adams, right, Folger Adams, Alarm Controls, you have the opportunity to talk to Albert or one of the others that we have available for you. You can not only talk to them, but if you're if you're out there on a job site and you're just looking at hardware, you don't understand what you're looking at, you can call and talk to them, and then they can enter a code. You can go to the video, you can enter a code, give it to Albert, and he can bring it up and he can see live stream what you're looking at. That's how much support we can give you. So before we do anything else, we need to kind of touch on site survey. I'm going to put you to work here for just a second again. So when you're doing a site survey, I've got myself a nice, beautiful decorative wall around an opening. I always kind of ask people, what is one of the most important tools you take with you when you go to a job site? And a lot of times we talk about cameras, we talk about notepads, we talk about rulers, we talk about all kinds of different things. But one of my biggest concerns that I'm always kind of worried about is if I'm planning on getting a wire to an opening, well, how do I get a wire there? And when I've got a decorative opening here to it, I need to know what is behind it. And probably one of the most important tools we have are our knuckles. We're knocking on things. I want to listen. I want to hear what is behind it. You know, is it filled with cement? Is that drywall and that pretty decorative paper, is it glued to brick or is it furred out like oftentimes we consider it should be? But those are key things that we're going to talk about, you know, things that we consider during site surveys. There's a lot of information we're gathering during our site surveys. And obviously right there at the bottom, what are code compliance considerations? Anytime we take something from a mechanical format into an electrical format, it has to be code compliant when we turn it over to the customer. We're responsible, we're licensed, contracted vendors. We need to ensure that that opening is 100% code compliant when we turn it over. So our technicians, the last guy who's going to touch it, the technician, the project manager, whoever it is before we turn it over, has to ensure code compliance. So let's get to where we're going to kind of start up for the meat of this. The meat is really about the hardware. When we're looking at taking something from a mechanical format to an electrical format, we have to understand what are we looking at on the existing hardware that we commonly find on an opening. And here you can see the common types of formats we normally look at. We think about mortise block sets with or without a deadbolt on it. Very common. We see a lot of those, not only on perimeter doors, but we also find them on the interior of doors. We look at bars across the door. You know, what type of a bar do you have across the door? Remember, bars come in 3 different formats. We have a basic rated bar, which has no rating to it whatsoever. I can buy that bar for maybe about $100, you know, a basic bar across the door. Okay, then we go into a panic rated bar. A panic rated bar is going to have a little stamp or a tab or something or a label on the end of it or somewhere listed on it that tells you that this bar is rated as a panic rated bar, which means that's been tested by UL Underwriters Laboratory. And if you have an occupancy load of 50 or more going out of a particular opening, you need to have a panic rated bar. The other form of that bar comes in a fire rated bar, something that has a UL listing for fire rating. That's where I'm working with a fire rated assembly, and I have to have that panic rated bar, 1, because of my load, 2, I have to have it rated for fire because it's part of a fire rated assembly. We will take a quick look at the secure bolt later on. It is a real high security door, panic rated bar. You're primarily going to find this in projects that have federal money to it. You're also going to find this when we're working in FEMA areas that are heavy with tornadoes. When I add vertical latching rods on, so I basically give it a 3-point latch point. So I got center, top, and bottom latching points. This rod or this bar is certified for tornado rated opening. So different things we can look at. At the bottom, obviously, we have knob sets and lever sets. Those are basically cylindrical lock sets. And we're going to talk about this over and over and over again. What is the length of the latch? What is the functionality of the hardware? Is it a passageway? I can turn both ways. Classroom function or storage room function? How does it lock? How does it secure? And then we're briefly going to touch on vertical rods up here because we do find vertical rods in not only storefront aluminum, but in other doors as well. And of course, for me, I carried around a little 6-inch ruler and it had all my measurements on it because I couldn't read all the little hash marks on it. So I just grabbed this, and most of my measurements, I'm going to measure on a door, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, 5/8 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch are all right there, simple and easy to see. But when we're looking at a cylindrical lock set, understanding basic nomenclature of the opening of the hardware we're working with. One of the big things I want to avoid is an unlock button because that basically gives me a passageway set. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. Understanding hardware of the door itself, the door latch, bolt, and the guard bolt. These are testable items. When I'm going to do a site survey and opening, I'm actually function testing the existing hardware on the opening. Does the guard bolt or the dead latch work to maintain the lockout capability on the existing latch bolt? So recognition of hardware, doing our measurements. What is the length of my latch? 1/2, 5/8, or 3/4 inch. That's the length of those latches. I can put my ruler down. Which one is it? What is the functionality of it? Does the functionality work? Does the dead locking plunger physically work and keep my latch locked out? So if they're kind of designed to protect from someone picking that opening or sliding a credit card in there and pushing back the latch on the opening. So they play a very particular function for us for security. So here I've got a door, I've got a wood door, I've got a wood frame with glass inside of it. Recognition of my hardware existing on it. What is the length of my latch? What is my functionality? I'm exercising it. I'm opening and closing the door. I'm going to function test the existing hardware. I want to make sure, how does it lock? How does it unlock? Because from there, I might consider, do I put an electric strike on the frame? Well, that might be a consideration. Remember, I'm always going to go back to understanding the skill set of my technicians, understanding what tools do we provide for them. Do they have the right tools to be able to do the work? Are we putting in a product that will work with the existing latch length? We're going to show you a survey or a form that's going to be available if you want it. Okay. Is there any kind of rating do I need? Do I need to be an outdoor rated? Do I need to be windstorm rated? If you're on the Gulf of Mexico and up the Atlantic seaboard, all the way up in the Long Island area, you have to deal with windstorm standards. Is it part of a fire rate assembly? Maybe I don't need all those things, but there are things I need to consider. What if my opening is unhealthy? If I have an unhealthy opening, oftentimes we're going to call it a preload. If you ever go to a door and you can't turn the lever set, there's a pressure against it, and I cannot retract the latch, that's considered a preload pressure. And oftentimes it happens because of air conditioning, heating. It can be caused by weather stripping around an opening. It can be caused by a door being warped over time. Excessive heat, excessive moisture in the air can expand some different products. So we have different issues. So when we're doing our site survey, I'm going from mechanical to electrical. I need to understand what are my options. The 7400, if I'm working with an existing condition and I need to look at doing something and a strike is an option, if I've got a preload pressure, the 7400 is one of my favorite strikes because it has different faceplates we can use. The 7400 is designed for storefront aluminum, but it will work with wood, it'll work with metal. It'll work in many different applications. So I really like that option. Available later on, Katie's going to provide this to you, is our guide for selection of electric strikes. And if you download this, it is a phenomenal survey tool. I created this probably about 5-6 years ago with one of the marketing ladies, who's really helped me out. Katie's helped me make it a little bit prettier over time and everything. But this is a phenomenal tool designed. If you're going to look at putting a strike on a frame, if you're going and doing a site survey, take this with you. If nothing else, it helps you recognize existing hardware. It helps you recognize, what do I need to measure, or what do I need to know? I need to know the length of the latch. Is it part of a fire rated, a windstorm rated assembly? Is it outdoor rated? It is a phenomenal tool for anybody doing site surveys. And we hand these out at pretty much all of our classes that we have. They're available to take. What is the existing hardware? What is the existing door, hardware, and frame? All that information. Because when we're looking at any particular opening, one, is it healthy? What is the functionality of the opening? What is the hardware? I might see on the outside of a building a lever set on it, but what happens on the inside of the building is probably even more important to me. Understanding functionality on the outside, understanding functionality on the inside, different types of hardware we're going to be mixing. What is the length of my latch? If I'm going to put a strike on it, what's my option? Different things we need to consider: 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. And I'll be the first to tell you, you need to think outside the box. We might run into situations, and I think I'm going to ask Albert, what is the distance I need to put a strike in a pocket? I think it's 1.5 inches. I need distance. I'm looking for 1.5 inches from the head of the bar to the frame to be able to slide an electric strike into the pocket to be able to get it to function with the existing hardware. So that depth may vary based on different products. But Albert, if you can toss that information that you have on the length or the distance between the head and the frame to put a strike in there does matter, because my my electric strike here, the 7400, is 1/2 inch thick. My others are 3/4 inch thick. So things we need to consider.
So I would say to that, Raj, is what we like to say is, if the exit device, the templating on that says to do this, then do that, but omit the strike that comes in the box, and you can use one of ours. So the spacing for the backs is already going to be predetermined on of that exit device. It's going to keep you away from the frame where it needs to be. So we're just going to slide our strike into that location at that point. We actually have a nice template too that would kind of help guide where that center line needs to be based off of your anti-pick or your dead latch, if it's offset or if it's behind.
And I'll show you the template later on too.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we continue on here, I've got another opening. I've got a simple privacy lock set. It's basically it's not even a lock set. It's a passageway set in some situations. So we're going to pay attention to that. But understanding our lock set, if I've got a basic privacy lock, or I've got a simple lock set, or it's even a passageway lock set, the question oftentimes is going to be who is going to replace it? Do I need to go to a storage room function or a classroom function lock? Understanding the hardware, what is the length of the latch, different things that we always consider, going from mechanical to electrified, what are my options? In this option here, I may have a couple of different options on this one. If I cannot put a strike in a frame, oftentimes we're working with property management, they say no strike in a frame. I need to consider, can I go to an electrified lever set? This door here, I can core that door and put in an electrified lever set on it. But there again, I go back to the skill set of the technicians and the people who work for me or the people I partner with. I spent a lot of time partnering with a locksmith because they had the tools they needed, they had the expertise. I want this job done neat and clean the very first time. And when we're looking at any kind of hardware, we always want to consider strikes are a great option in many applications, but not in every application. Here we had a situation where the depth of the pocket was less than 1 inch in depth. They went and put a strike in there. A minimum depth for any strike that I know of or aware of is 1 1/16 inch depth to be able to go inside there. Here, they basically wanted to put a strike in. You can see what happened is they got it tightened down on the end, but it bowed across the top, right across the top of the center there because there's not enough depth in the pocket. So making sure we're looking or paying attention to what is available for the installations. We even run into, a lot of times we run into the residential locks. What are my different options? We find the residential lock sets in commercial businesses. We do have options to be able to do that. We have options for electrified lock sets or electric strikes. There again, it's what are we considering? What are we looking for? And as anything else, you always have to be willing to look outside the box. Here, I've got a post for a tool crypt. So this is an interior building tool crypt where they keep their tools. And instead of cutting a square hole in the tubing of the fence, they went and surface mounted our 9600 electric strike, working in conjunction with a cylindrical lock set. Think outside the box. Don't be afraid to consider what your different options are. This one here was really kind of unique, and everyone kind of said, why would you cut a 9600 strike into a frame? So this is actually one of our older strike models. They went and cut it into a frame to work with a cylindrical lock set. And what's really kind of, you kind of miss and you can't really see on this image is the fact that there is glass sitting over here. That's a glass side light over there. So if I've got to cut a strike in 1 inch and 1/16 into this pocket, there's a good probability I'm going to hit that glass right there. And I do not want to hit the glass and shatter it. So there again, be willing to look outside the box. We do have, as Albert mentioned, some different templates available. The Smart Pack is one of the most common products that we use in many applications where we're putting something into a timed function. The solenoid is taking pressure all day long. Or oftentimes if I've got an imbalance in electricity where I need to balance out my voltage that's hitting my strike because I'll burn out my solenoid. Skill sets are important. We talked earlier a couple of times about the skill set of our technician. A lot of different applications when we're going from mechanical to electrical, we need to understand what are my primary options, when it comes to hardware. My 5 primary options for electrified hardware are a mag lock, 1, standard fail-safe. Mag locks are more of a necessity as we need them. Then we go into electrified lever sets, electrified mortise lock set, and electrified bars, all 3 which can include the capability or the necessity to core a door in some format or another to be able to get a wire to run through a door. So different things we need to consider, making sure we have the proper products and the skill set for our technicians. The 5th one, obviously, is an electric strike. But understanding what it takes to be able to get a wire through a door, electrified lever sets, mortise lock set bars, always consider what they are. And You can always go to a reclamation yard and buy a solid wood core door, take it home and practice drilling on it. But I do recommend getting a jig, and I'll show you a jig a little bit later on. So let's go back to hardware again. Understanding my mechanical hardware I have in place. Mortise lock sets. What type of a mortise lock set is it? With or without a deadbolt? The standard deadbolt length on mortise lock set is 1 inch. My standard length of my primary latch is 3/4 inch, and my dead latch is usually a 1/2 inch in depth. So we've got different products we need to look at, and they come in many different applications, from perimeter doors, interior doors, anything from offices to dorm rooms to hotel rooms. Many different applications. We're looking at perimeter fencing, but we need to recognize what type of latch we have. We have a mortise lock set. And what mortise means that it's cut in. It's actually cut in or mortise into a pocket inside the door. Probably the easiest way to recognize it, one, is the different types of latching you have here. You have a primary latch, and then usually a secondary latch, which is your dead latch, in conjunction sometimes with a dead bolt. But that I think it's about 9 inches in length, that plate right there, that gives me the indication that I have a mortise lock set. You can oftentimes have a deadbolt here or a locking mechanism up above a lever, or it can also be in the lever itself. So different functionality by different manufacturers. Recognition of the deadbolt with or without it, doing your, excuse me, your basic measurements. We know are going to be 1 inch for the bolt, 3/4 inch for the latch, 1/2 inch for the guard bolt. What are we working with? And these are important because different manufacturers are going to place the latch and the dead latch in different locations. Sometimes it's sitting up above the main latch, sometimes it's sitting below. And based on that, we have to deal with different options for faceplates. The 1006 is 27 different faceplates. We can basically narrow it down to about 3 to 4 different faceplates we're going to use most frequently now. So we've got options for electric strikes, different faceplates that we're going to be using. Under handle and cylinders under that. And I've seen that too on the European styles. You'll see the lock, the mortise cylinders underneath the handle. So a lot of times when you're working with a mortise lock set, you can go with an electric strike. And I totally messed up my animation there because there should have been, sorry about that. It's like you're trying to fix something and you mess it up. But underneath that is a part of a fire rated assembly is one of the most important things. If you're going to go to an electrified mortise lock set, you need to make sure if you've got a fire rated assembly there, you're going to have that capability of, working with that door. And if you've got a core of the door, you can get trained and certified to core a fire rated door. What is the location of the main latch? The main latch needs to drop inside the pockets. That's where we have different faceplates. The dead latch will ride up on either the body of the strike or the faceplate, whichever one you have. Here, my dead latch is sitting up above. Latch is going to drop into the main pocket. The dead latch is going to ride up on the faceplate. Location is important here. If you don't understand what you're working with, if you want to order the right products, you can order a complete pack on the 1006 or call Albert, call our team here in Phoenix, and they'll help you out. And it's so critical because I was called on a project site. Here was the mortise locks that we had. And what happened is the integrator came out, cut for the strikes to be installed. And what they failed to realize is that the location of the latch and the dead latch, they didn't do any measurement really. They really kind of pulled out the strike plate and went and put in. But what happened is they failed to cut 5/32 lower. And you can't really see it right there, but right here you can see the main latch is hitting the body of the strike. It will not drop into the pocket because that 5/32 lower, it created that problem. So they had to cut lower. They had this on over 30 doors had to be cut lower. They needed a weatherproof gasketing we had to go in to fill the pocket in there. So we want to make sure that when we're working with this, we have the right products. Let's go over to our bars. On our bars, we have different situations. Obviously, we have to measure the length of the latch is very critical to us. Realizing that in many different situations, we oftentimes have different options of going from mechanical to electrified. Here, this is in a school. The school wants to protect their library for after hours, create an access control environment so who can go into the library at designated times. We've got existing on here. We've got latching on the center right here off the center mullion. Understanding considerations, understanding code compliance In this application here, I really don't have code compliance issues as long as I maintain my center latching capability and free egress at all times. What type of latch do I have? What is my existing length of latch on that hardware? Can I put an electric strike in the frame? Very good possibility, but I always need to consider up on the top of here, I've got a center removable mullion. What we used to do when we had a center removable mullion is we would go to a trailer hitch store and we'd get a quick disconnect trailer hitch disconnect, which would make it easy and simple for the maintenance guys to remove it. Up above here, we put a 4-square box up there and we put all the connections and everything up there. We create a simple drop down capability through the mullion so that when they had to remove it, they had the capability of doing a simple drop down. They can maintain the wire and everything. We would also put a small chain. We put a small chain from the bar up to the frame right on the side of it here, so that it made them think, because they would go to disconnect it and they pull it and they'd, the chain would catch them before they pulled too far, breaking the wiring in the inside. The other option on this one that would also be a very easy consideration is considering, can I come down the hinge and go with some type of a electrified bar? Can I electrify that opening? So different considerations based on, what is the skill set of my technicians, capability of coring different doors, understanding my space in between my head and my bar. Do I have enough room to slide an electric strike in that gap, a 1/2 inch versus a 3/4 inch? What is the length of the latch? What are the capabilities to bring a strike down versus going and get an electrification kit from the manufacturer? So different options we always want to consider between strikes and levers, strikes and other hardware. When you're working with this, the gap in between the product is important. Using the distance that we have from the head to the bar, make sure we have enough room for a strike to be able to fit in. Sometimes we may run into an issue where we cannot fit a 3/4 inch strike. In many applications, I can get a 1/2 inch strike to work. You need to make sure and verify, is it part of a fire rated assembly or part of the windstorm standards? There, we're going to have limitations on strikes that might be available. Here you have an example of a 9700 strike. I've got a monitor point in here so I can monitor my latch inside my pocket. You can see that is windstorm rated. Here again, bars on doors. Probably the quickest and easiest way to access control a door with a bar on it is with an electric strike. So we've got different options. Getting wires to the hinge versus getting wires to the latch side of the open is important. Pre-existing conditions are important. Do I have any kind of a weather issue? Is the door warped? Things like that are things I consider during taking something mechanical to electrify. The square bolt over here, the square bolt is super heavy duty. This application here, I actually had the pleasure of going with the team out in San Diego. They were going to a zoo to install this on a door where there were gorillas. So this thing was super heavy duty, strong. You can see the square bolt is designed to give us extra holding capability. This square bolt only works with the 9700. So if you have that super heavy application, this, when I add the top and bottom vertical rods, will also meet tornado standards for FEMA. So it is a very strong product. Understanding the latching, it only works with the 9700 strike. They only work with each other. Okay, so as Albert briefly mentioned before, we do have a template. If you ever get a chance to attend any of our classes, when we do electric strike cutting classes, we do give these away for free. So if you're attending our class, we give this template away. It is a phenomenal tool for lining up any of our surface mount strikes. Makes it quick, makes it easy. I always tell the technicians in the class, don't tell your project manager, the boss, you have it. It'll save you a lot of time, but it gives you other time to work on other parts of the project. Okay, so a phenomenal tool to be able to work. Okay. Let me see. Okay, different options. Here again, we also have accessory plates and different mounting brackets, things that will help you. Sometimes you got to go hunt for them, depending on how you need to mount something up on the opening. Here is a double door. I only need one door to be active. So here they had to put a block on the back of the strike for stability of it, so that when the door works and functions, I'm not going to damage the strike. It's not going to come off very easily. And let's get on to the next one here. The last one, vertical latching points. Okay, vertical latching points are going to come in many different applications, not just storefront aluminum, but many applications where we're dealing in businesses, heavy duty or heavier manufacturing, all kinds of different applications where I'm working with that vertical rod option up on the top of the door, doing our site survey, gathering the information. Here you can see we have an issue with, we're going to be dealing with cinder block brick all the way around the opening. Anytime you have cinder block, you're also going to be dealing with a steel header beam up on top where you have to consider, and how am I going to get wires around or through that steel header? You know, what does the customer want to look for? Surface mounting products, recognition, understanding different options. On this application here, I can go to an electrified vertical rod. We have some functionality with electrifying that rod set. I can also consider an electric strike. There again, getting wires to the points I need to get it to, understanding the skill set of my technicians. Always important. If you need assistance, reach out to our teams, send me pictures. I love it when I get pictures and send me pictures of inside, outside, the whole doors, zoomed in on that door so I can kind of see the existing hardware. Send me the pictures and I'll help you. I'll give you my thoughts on why I would do one thing versus another thing, because there's always different considerations when we're considering, okay, electrify the bar versus putting electric strike on top of the frame, dealing with a frugal customer. If the customer is going to, deal with pricing issues, costing issues, a strike will be your less expensive way to go. But there again, we have different considerations if we're going to put a strike on the top of this door because I've got cinder block up on the top. So I know it's going to be filled up with cement or mortar up in that top of that pocket up there. You have to be able to recognize what type of latching point you have on the top. The latching point will oftentimes come in a turning cylindrical tube where the latch comes in and it turns and wraps around it. I can't really do anything with that. And then I also have posts out here, two different types of primary surface mount or concealed post. Not much I can do with those, but we always want to consider what is the other option. We are finding more and more of the vertical rods right now that actually have a Pullman latch up on the top of it. Now, Pullman latch is no different than a basic Pullman latch we're going to find on a panic rated bar. I'm just turning it up vertical. I can work with that. I can work with those because we're going to find those in different applications, recognizing what we're working with, what are the different options. Can I put an electric strike up in the top up there? Obviously, having the right tools to work with it. We never really had anybody who worked for us that was a great door hardware guy. So we partnered with a locksmith because the locksmith had the right tools. They understand the right measurements to be able to take. When we're working with a vertical rod setup here, singles aren't too bad, but when you get into doubles, you have to take the correct measurements. Am I working with something that's going to be a narrow style or something that's going to be a wide style? Different measurements we want to be able to take. Understanding the length of the latch is important. So we have a lot of different options, but oftentimes we don't always have the right tools for our technicians. Turn it over to a locksmith, let them do it right. They know how to work with the tools. They're going to do it neat and do it clean. Now what I'm going to show you is probably something that's really taken off finally in the last 2 to 3 years. Vertical latch sets on all glass doors. We fought the battle for years and years and years. While I'm working with an all glass door, I basically had a pull handle or I had a thumb turn at the bottom of the door. I had no vertical latching capability at the top of the door. Vertical latching capability has been around for several years now, but we're dealing with architects who are dealing with customers, and they don't always see everything that we're seeing on the hardware side as quickly as we do. But the vertical latching capability takes that vertical, you've got an existing bar across the door here. It's got a mechanism within the door that as I push or pull that mechanism will release my latch up on top of the door. So it gives me a vertical latching point. And with that vertical latching point up on the top, I can take and I can look at adding an electric strike up there. Even on this image right over here, I've got an all glass wall. So if I want to look at access controlling this area up here, is there enough room in that pocket up there for me to get a wire down through that seam of the glass, get a wire inside there? Can I mount a strike up on the top of that door to get it to work and function with the vertical latching point? Now, the two primary latching mechanisms you're going to see right now for vertical latching rods are one, the top version up here. This is an Ossobloy latching mechanism. It's very similar to a standard standard latch that we're going to work with on your mortise lock sets or your commercial cylindrical lock sets. On the bottom down here, you have one by a competitor. We can we have a replacement. So if you're working with the vertical rod with a roller ball up inside there, it is critical that that roller ball gets high enough up inside there to interact with the strike. Otherwise, what I've heard can happen is you can get that door bouncing, and that roller ball will literally bounce right out of that pocket, and it will come unlocked. You can pull that out, and we do have a replacement for it, so you get more of a standard locking mechanism for working with an electric strike up at the top of the opening. So there are different functionalities, you know, single doors, double doors, there are electric strikes available for it. And those are some nice little bumper pads for it, you know, kind of cushion that door when it comes in. So obviously alignment of the door, the health of the opening is very important. And anybody that's been doing this for a long time knows these doors require maintenance. And if you're not going to maintain them, you're going to have problems in time. Let's take a quick look at other applications. How about the ones on the outside of gates and fences? Growing up in Arizona here doing access control, I did a lot of perimeter doors. I did a lot of apartment complex and swimming pools where you have to provide access control. When you get up into bigger cities, you've got a lot of subway systems. We've got extra gates, perimeter things where we're dealing with security and access control. Understanding key things that we need to pay attention to. Obviously the meshing in and around the fence. How do we keep it how do we take care of that fence so someone's not going to reach through, someone's not going to shove something through? And even a collar, the prevention of the collar is there to design someone from throwing a rope up and over, pulling it through on the bottom and just pulling on that bar and releasing the latch. So collar is important. If you've got a cylindrical lock set, you can actually get a collar that just sits around. You got to kind of put your hand in there and turn it, you know, but it's big enough so you can get your hand in there without somebody, you know, trying to be able to mess with it at all times. Here, I've got different fencing areas. I've got an acetate or a hard plastic sitting back here to prevent reach throughs or throwovers to be able to prevent someone from getting to the bar. And the other thing I really want to key on is a door stop. Anytime you're working with fencing, perimeter fencing, we're thinking about that door banging on something. You want to make sure we have a good door stop, whether it's part of the fencing, whatever it is. Here, I've got a nice solid door stop back here. It's going to prevent my strike from being the stop point on it. So, okay. One of the other things I just briefly want to show you is something that's brand new to us is a part of the Imperial family. A part of the Imperial family, we've got multiple different wireless products that are available for us where you can have a hub that's going to sit up on a wall and it can wirelessly communicate to different products from cabinet locks, glass doors, storefront doors, different types of small cabinets, IT racks, and even wireless readers. But the ES100, a new product that just really came out in the last 6 months, it's really kind of hit the market. We've been playing with this for about a year now, and it just really started getting a lot of traction in the last 6 months. But imagine no running wires down a wall to get to an electric strike or get to a reader. What we can do right now is in the HES Imperial V3 ES100 electric strike, I have a motor in here instead of a solenoid. So my strikes are driven by a motor. Okay, that motor is connected to my reader. So I've got my reader on the side of the door. I've got my strike on the frame right there by it. I've got a small 13-inch connection between the two. Everything is powered by 2 lithium cell batteries inside the R100. Okay, you're talking about 45,000 cycles of operation. I do feature this in our Imperial class that we do separately. This is a phenomenal product. You order it, you can only get it right now with the 1500 or the 1600 strike. So you've got some different options, but I've installed this, I've worked with it, I've set it up. It is a phenomenal product. It's nice and clean. If you're dealing with a retrofit, you're dealing with a historical application where it's hard to get a wire to it, this is a great product. You're not going to be using this outside though. This is not going to have an outdoor application at this point. Maybe sometime in the future we can get that. The R100, I can consider putting it outside. I've got to cover over something where I've got to cover up on it, or if I'm going to consider putting it in an outdoor application on a perimeter door, I want to make sure and cover it up probably with some type of a polycarbonate cover to protect it. But I still only have a 13-inch loop between my reader and my electric strike. So just applications are important. And the hub's going to have to find its location so I can, I want the hub to see the reader. The hub sees the reader. They communicate and talk. I've got a great access control option for you. Talk to us and we can help you out. Safety, critical, critical, critical. Everybody goes home safe at the end of the day. One of the most important things for me is understanding that having the proper tools, having the proper certification, the training for our technicians. So when they're out there working, they know how to do their jobs. They know how to work with the different tools. Last thing we want is anybody getting hurt, but safety is critical. Okay. Possibly Academy. If you're not familiar with them, they have over 100 classes right now available online. You can get CEUs by taking those classes as well. We're in the process of converting a lot of our classes right now over into the Academy, so you can get CEUs when you take and watch it as well. Okay. Built app. Possibly right now has over 100 products on the Built app. If you ever go to Home Depot or Lowe's or IKEA and you buy something, it has to be put together, look for that little symbol up there on the side of the product, because it may give you an idea that there's an app in there that'll show you how to put something together. Right now, also Veloy has has 100 products on the Built app that will, in 15 to 20-second snippets, show and tell you how, or explain to you how to do a little part of the installation, one step at a time, one step at a time. If you've got 40 installation steps, you're going to have 40 little steps that'll walk you through how to do it in short snippets. You watch it, you go do it, come back, watch the next snippet, go do it step by step by step. Phenomenal app. And then, of course, I've shown this app a couple different times during the class. You can go into the app, reach out to us here, HES, Securitron, Adams Ray, Folger Adams, alarm controls. Reach out to us on the app, talk to our team, Albert, Luis, some of the others are there. Albert had it up on his phone there, but go on this. If you start talking to them, they say, hey, hit your streaming video there, and you can live stream video to the text, to Albert. He can see exactly what you're seeing at the exact same time. You also have resources for the library. You can go see all the literature for all the different products, warranty information, tools, different things we can recommend, but it's all sitting right there for you. And last but not least, I've been a manager for technicians for years. And one of the big things I always told them, when you have resources available, learn how to reuse your resources. I don't care how you get something fixed, but if you can get it fixed, get it done quickly and get it done correctly so you don't have to return. If you can't figure it out and just you don't know what you're doing, 10 minutes, call and talk to the teams. They're there to help and support you. And our team here is phenomenal. You can see just a group of the team here. Here's our information for Russ and I.